CT is like a spider web. It's very, very thin, it's very, very fine. You know, you're out walking through the woods and you walk right into it, it sticks to your face, right? The only time you visualize a spider web is when you see the things that are stuck in it. It's pretty easy to see if the spider's hanging there or if there's a fly stuck in it, right? That's the idea. Well, the reticular CT, the reason it fills up lymph nodes is because what it traps in there are immature lymphocytes. So when you look in here, this is what you see. Just a bunch of cells. And mostly those are immature lymphocytes. Immature lymphocytes and macrophages. That's mostly the cellular material you see in there. There will be some fibroblasts because they have to make the CT. When you get closer to the middle of the lymph node, you get blood vessels in here. So it sort of fragments up a little bit. And this area is called the medulla. Area that's a little fragmented up there. And where you see these dense pockets of the immature lymphocytes, that's called cortex. That's cortex, and in the middle there is medulla. Lymph nodes are an example of something called encapsulated lymphatic tissue, which means they have a connective tissue capsule that goes around the node. There are pockets of lymphatic tissue found throughout the body that are not encapsulated, and so that's why we have encapsulated and non-encapsulated. So you find a capsule, and then if you're real good in the microscope, you might be able to see a little gap between the capsule and where the cortex begins, and that would be called the subcapsular space. So the way the lymph flows, so lymph is interstitial fluid. Okay? That's what lymph is. Lymph is interstitial fluid that's had most of the proteins removed from it. So lymph flows in here, goes through the subcapsular space, and then filters through the nodes, they're called. Okay? Well, they're nodules. Sorry, the lumps in here are called nodules. They filter through there, and then they finally get into here, where they go into a blood vessel. Well, sorry, not into a blood vessel, into a lymphatic vessel. And this particular lymphatic vessel goes out here. So all the ones that are coming in are called afferents. Afferent vessels come in. Efferent vessels go out. So you can kind of see how it works as a filter. Take the lymphatic tissue in, filter it through the nodules, collects in the medullary sinus, goes out through the efferent vessel. Now, it's not likely when you look at a histology slide of this, you're going to see the efferent vessel. You don't usually catch that. Remember, this is a 360-degree structure. Lymph nodes are about 1.5 inches long usually, and we're taking about a 5 to 10 micron slice through it. So the chances of actually seeing the efferent vessel are very, very slim. Okay? But you should be able to see the capsular space, the nodules, the medulla, and the lymphocytes. You can see all of that in there clearly. When you're out near the edge, sometimes these nodules, as they're called, bulge out like that a little bit. It makes it easier to visualize them. Take out a shape like that. And over here's another nodule. And over there's another nodule. So they kind of blend together, and it's a little hard to see them. In some slides, it's more obvious, and you can kind of see this demarcation. In other ones, it's harder to see. But if it's lumpy like that, you can find the nodules. So there you go. There's a lymph node for you. In your book, your lab book has some pretty good pictures, with some good diagrams in it. So use that. Your lymphatic organs, guys. So if we were going to look at a person here, get the idea. We have what are called primary lymphatic organs. Your primary lymphatic organs consist of just two things: thymus and say that is the ileum. It's a bone, which it's supposed to be. And in here, you have bone marrow. Those are your two primary lymphatic organs: bone marrow and the thymus. Okay. Everything else is secondary lymphatic organs. Your secondary lymphatic organs are two of those. Over here we've got the spleen. And we have lymph nodes, in which you've got some back here in the back of the throat, called the pharyngeal. You have some next to the tongue, which is called the palatine. And you have some just beneath the tongue called the lingual. So you've got tonsils. There are three. You also have lymph nodes. And they're in clusters in these different areas. And lymph nodes are connected by all their little trunks. And they'll lead back to the same place eventually. So these are all of our nodes. Those are secondary lymphatic structures also. Spleen. Oh, down about, let me get this wrong. Yeah, down about here, you've got the little end of the large intestine. Oh, the large intestine kind of comes around like that. That could be over the rectum. But this tail end of the large intestine right there, anybody know what that's called? That's the appendix, right? Vermiform appendix. That's a secondary lymphatic organ. And then down here, where a lot of these collecting vessels all lead into, you have a swollen end of a duct here. It's got the chylate, cisternocylate, or more Latin. Then we lead into these large collecting vessels, which are called ducts, of which you have two major ones, the left and the right. Right lymphatic duct, left lymphatic duct. The left lymphatic duct, for whatever reason, gets called the thoracic duct. And what I didn't draw on there is what the ducts lead into. So sitting right here is the heart. Thymus sits on the base of the heart. And the vena cava and the subclavian veins are here. And the ducts just lead back into the veins. The right lymphatic duct leads into the right brachiocephalic trunk. The left duct, the thoracic duct, leads into the left subclavian. And again, the pictures in your book are far better than my drawings. So a picture should emerge of how this works, okay? We collect interstitial fluid back in our lymphatic vessels. They flow into the trunks, okay? The trunks flow through the nodes. The nodes filter the lymph, okay? What do they filter out of the lymph? They filter antigens out of the lymph, which is what we talked about last time. We described what an antigen was. The antigens are shown to lymphocytes. And if it matches certain lymphocyte receptors, it'll activate the lymphocytes, and that's how you energize your immune system. Okay. Then we just continue to take that lymph and we take it through successively more central lymph nodes as it collects back here. If you're from the gut or the lower legs, you're going to go through this chyli cisterna into the thoracic duct, and you're going to ascend up here to the left subclavian. If you come from the right arm, okay, right side of the neck, well, really pretty much the whole head and neck, you're going to go into the right lymphatic duct. Everything else goes into the left. Okay, only the right arm and the head and neck go into the right. The spleen's a lymphatic organ, but the spleen filters blood, not lymph. Coming out of the heart here, we don't have an aorta. We go off of the spleen. In the spleen, we have a very similar structure to lymph nodes that look very, very similar. I'm not going to draw it on there because you have good pictures in your book. But within the spleen, there are a few differences. The number one difference is that the spleen is filtering blood, not lymph. Okay? Within the spleen, you're going to have a lot of lymphocytes and macrophages, just like you have in a lymph node. The spleen is going to be largely responsible for removing damaged white and red blood cells. That's its main job. The spleen's job is a garbage heap for damaged red blood cells. And so in order to do that, the splenic artery has to branch several times into tiny little arterioles. And each arteriole feeds into what we call a corpuscle within the spleen. At the center of every one of those corpuscles, I said I wasn't going to draw it, but I lied. When you look within the spleen, you're going to see a lot of this reticular connective tissue. You'll see dense little centers like this. And again, those are just mostly lymphocytes around those areas. And in the center of those areas, sometimes you'll even see a little arteriole. Not always, but usually there'll be a little branch of the splenic artery. And then scattered around out here, less dense, are mostly macrophages.